Welcome to the Moved to Meditate podcast. I'm your host, Addie D. Hilster. If you're a yoga practitioner or teacher who knows that there's more to yoga than poses, but you're wondering where to find that, come join our quiet little party. Here you'll find resources to help you deepen your practice, as well as insightful conversations with yoga, movement, and meditation teachers from a range of traditions. On this podcast, we spotlight the more contemplative aspects of movement practice. So we talk about all things gentle yoga, meditation, yin, restorative, yoga therapy, mindfulness, and more. Listen in and connect to a community of like-minded practitioners. Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining me for this episode of the podcast. It's a pleasure to spend a little time with you, as always, and today we're going to talk about how slow, mindful yoga can help us be more present for our lives. And if you're here, I'm guessing that matters to you like it does to me. Many of us have this aspiration to slow down, or this feeling that life is kind of pulling us on a faster ride than we'd like. But it's not so easy to just say, okay, I'm going to live a slower existence with full presence and really savor my life now. I mean, if only. I do have 6 suggestions to offer you for slowing down and savoring your yoga practice with more mindfulness. And I think that you'll also find that many of these translate to mindful moments off the mat. Those little pauses during the day are absolute gold. They develop the habit of presence and bring it to life where it really counts, in life. But your mindful yoga or your mindful movement practice can be the ideal place to really get familiar with how to slow down, what it feels like to slow down, and to understand which tools and techniques work best for you personally. So we'll go over some of those today. And before I say more, a little preview of what's coming. Next week's episode should be an interview episode, if all goes as planned with the recording that I have scheduled at the end of the week. It's great to get back to doing some interviews, and it's been a while because I had a lot of family stuff, as some of you know, through the late summer and early fall that made it kind of impractical to even schedule those kinds of conversations. I just kind of couldn't. But it's someone that I'm really excited to meet and talk to, but I'm going to leave it as a surprise for you. So come back next week and find out. And thank you to those of you who do come back week after week and listen to these talks. I hope it helps you to feel connected to others in the world who value mindfulness and kindfulness and slowing down. It certainly gives me hope to know that there's more of us out there. If today's topic resonates with you, please share it with someone else who aspires to live with presence like you do, and help us make more of those connections. So, slowing down. I think it's safe to say that most of us have days, or weeks, or years, where we long to slow down. Life can feel so full, sometimes too full, with all of the things we want to do, the things we have to do, and, balancing our responsibilities and all of our roles. If you're listening to this podcast, I would bet that you have a sense, maybe a strong sense, that there's value in slowing down. When we're living life at a fast, breakneck pace, going from one thing to another, it doesn't leave us much space. We can hardly pause to reflect on whether this is even working for us. Is this actually getting me what I want? And what are my deeper intentions? What do I want? And even when we squeeze in time for the things we enjoy, it can be hard to actually savor them. If we haven't shifted out of autopilot, distraction, and speed, how can we be present? For that time with a sweet friend, to be present for that walk in nature to see the fall leaves turning like they're doing here right now, or to be present for that delicious chocolate croissant. We really want to taste that, right? But there's a lot of momentum behind this habit of going fast and keeping busy. In some ways, it feels way more comfortable to just keep up the pace. It's certainly what others seem to expect of us. I know I've had experiences of getting to a weekend or a vacation and being like, oh, good, I can finally relax. And then, like 30 seconds later, realizing I have no idea how to slow down. Going suddenly from like full speed ahead to resting, relaxing, and slowing down can sometimes feel like crashing into a brick wall. Truly slowing down is a process. It needs to be a process. And we can really benefit from having some tools in our life that gradually get us familiar with slowing down and get us used to that. We need to know how. Otherwise, it just keeps being a wish and not happening. This is where slow mindful yoga or other mindful movement practices come in. We can test the waters, the calmer waters, and get curious and learn some actual skills. Whether you're new to yoga and mindful movement or you've been practicing for years, I have a few suggestions for how to savor slowing down on the mat. Many of these could also be 3-minute practices in the middle of the day, no mat required at all, actually. And others could be experiments that you bring into a full session when you go to a class or find a practice online. So here we go, my 6 suggestions. Suggestion number 1 is to do a mindful check-in at the beginning and end of your practice, and also be sure to pause several times to check in during the practice, during your time on the mat. All of my classes that I teach start with some form of mindful check-in, or all the practices I personally do also start with some form of mindful check-in because I find it really valuable. I find it helps shape the trajectory of the whole practice. But if you happen to take a class where the teacher launches right into movement without guiding a check-in, that's okay. So maybe you can pause the video for 2 minutes and do your own check-in. Or if you know you're going to a class at a studio, to try to arrive a few minutes early and sit mindfully on your mat to check in before the official start of class. A simple way to check in with yourself, kind of how this might look if you're self-guiding a mindful check-in, is to tune into 3 aspects of your present moment experience: the body, heart, and mind. So we can do it together right now, and you can learn this practice where you can take it with you anywhere. And we just start by tuning into the body. If you're driving, definitely don't close your eyes, but if you're just sitting and listening, maybe you can kind of shift gears and tune into the body and notice any sensations that are here. Any feelings of tension or relaxation, wherever they might be. High energy, low energy. Noticing any aches and pains that are showing up, or areas in the body that just need a little extra care right now. Just simply observing this. And then we turn towards the heart by noticing any moods or emotions that are present. Just being on the lookout for experiences like excitement or frustration, impatience, hope, sadness, whatever it might be. Just noticing moods, emotions. Just kind of this flavor and tone of the moment. So no need to do anything with it, just notice and name it. And then we turn towards the mind. What is the activity level of the mind and the environment of the mind like right now? Is it busy or calm? Is there a feeling of pressure? Maybe curiosity or confusion? Is the mind feeling clear, fuzzy and foggy? Just allowing whatever is here right now. And that's it. That was our check-in. Checking in with body, heart, and mind. So it's pretty simple, right? All of this will influence your practice. So it's really good to notice before you even start. It's kind of like taking your baseline. And you can also see how these states will shift during and after your practice session. So Also, during the practice, see if you can just stop a few times. Stand still for a few breaths, or go into child's pose a few times and just pause. So we're inserting these little breaks. Even if you don't need it physically to stop and catch your breath and rest, the purpose is to simply connect again to this intention of slowing things down. Just pumping the brakes a little bit. And what are we doing when we pause like that in the middle of class? Hopefully we're checking in rather than checking out. Sometimes I think when the momentum stops, people kind of check out and they're waiting for the action to pick back up. But we can use that time to actually check in, because the idea is to interrupt the momentum, to interrupt that habit of always moving, speeding along to the next thing, that way that we can just be on autopilot. And when we pause and check in, we're not expecting to find anything in particular. We're just being receptive, pausing to listen for a moment. And then finally, at the end of class, check in with yourself again. That could be during Shavasana or closing breaths or meditation after Shavasana. How do you feel now compared with where you started today? What's present now in your body, heart, and mind? So that was the first suggestion, doing the mindful check-ins. And my second suggestion is to slow down your breath. So this is another simple way to approach this intention of slowing down, and this time doing it by literally slowing down the breath. You can just sit at your desk at work and take 2 minutes to lengthen and slow your breath. This one is very portable. Or whenever you're waiting at a red light in traffic, use that time to slow down your breath. Why not enjoy those built-in pauses where life is like, hey, here's your chance to slow down for a second. Enjoy your red light time. At first, you might be annoyed that you had to stop at the light, but the breathing technique might work for you anyways. And that's because slowing down the breath is highly beneficial for the nervous system. When the breathing is slow and calm, our nervous system perceives the situation to be safe. We don't have to be so on guard, so on edge. And that helps us to relax and just take in the moment, to see what's there. Slowing down your breath can also work in any style of yoga or mindful movement. Even the faster-paced practices like vinyasa flow yoga, where you're moving from pose to pose pretty continuously. You could be aware of your breath throughout all of your movements and encourage the breath to be slow and smooth. And when you notice the breath speeding up, maybe pause for a moment, let things settle again. And then come back into the movement with a renewed awareness of your breath and a link to the stillness or the slowness within the movement. So then 3, try styles of yoga that are generally slower. This one might sound kind of obvious, but it's easy to forget that it's an option to just go to a class that's naturally slower if our goal is to slow down. Styles like yin yoga, restorative yoga, or a true gentle yoga class. Sometimes people get hung up on thinking that these classes are less advanced or that they're for when you, quote, can't do the more active yoga styles. But neither of those things are true. In some ways, these slower yoga classes are more challenging because of exactly what we're talking about here. I've been teaching yoga for more than 13 years, and I can tell you that sometimes people with a lot of physical ability who can do the, quote, fancy poses struggle in these slower classes because it challenges them in a different way. That buildup of speed is hard to shake. The way that we value action and feeling like we're just doing the most, it's hard to let that go and invest the time in a practice that truly embraces slowness. But you might find that it really actually helps you to be in that slow environment. The environment itself, the people who are there, that can actually help you regulate and come into your own slowness. Because our nervous systems vibe off of other people. It's called co-regulation. So when you're practicing with a teacher who really embodies presence and mindfulness, even online, you can pick this up. You pick up on that unconsciously, and it can really help you slow down. It's powerful to be in a room full of people slowing down together. even a Zoom room full of people slowing down together. And that's one of my favorite aspects of teaching yin yoga. I get to watch the trajectory through the class where people come in at their normal level of busyness and restlessness and distractibility. And then as we go through the class, moment by moment, pose by pose, a stillness starts to descend upon the room. And it happens naturally. It's surprisingly quite a tangible feeling, and you can really feel this kind of like a peaceful hush as things slow down. So try going to some of those classes, those yoga classes that are just slower by nature. See how it works for you. And then suggestion number 4 is to play with the pacing of your movements. So you can do this in your own yoga practice or in a class you're taking to just kind of play and experiment. Because we often don't realize it, but we tend to have habitual speeds that we go when we do certain movements. So you can even just be on the lookout for that and see if that's true. That you have a certain speed that you do your shoulder circles, a certain speed that your cat-cow goes. So what if we shake that up by either going slower or even by going a little faster sometimes? You could take a simple movement like hip circles. Anything repetitive should work. And change up the pace. Like imagine hip circles, laying on your back with one knee towards your chest and you're circling around from the hip, right? We've all done this. You probably have a general speed that you usually go with that, right? You don't think about it. Well, what does it feel like if you go even slower, like super slow? Or what does it feel like to try smaller, faster circles? One is not better than the other necessarily, at least for our purposes here, because when we change up our pace, we stimulate our curiosity. Even when the circle is faster, maybe your mind is slower because it's so interested in what you're doing. Novelty, doing something different. Again, we've gotten out of autopilot. We've come into the present moment. Off the mat, you could try something similar by walking a little more slowly sometimes. When you're not truly about to be late for anything, but you're just moving fast, like kind of out of habit, challenge yourself to take a little longer walking down the aisle of the grocery store or walking from your office to the bathroom. Look around, just be present. Like feel your feet touching the floor, lifting off the floor. And be curious and just see what this does for you. It's something to maybe play with a few times a day. Make it a little game for yourself. So that was number 4, playing with the pacing of your movements. On to number 5, having moments of improv or spontaneous movement in your practice. Letting go of the plan sometimes is nice. And this one translates easily into moments in daily life because we could just sit and kind of do this inquiry in our desk chair or any moment when we want to introduce a little movement. But it's also really fun to bring to the mat. The way I do this is by imagining that I'm asking my body a question and then letting it respond with a movement. The body's not going to answer back with words. It can respond with sensations. It can respond with telling me a movement it wants to do. Let's do this together right now so you can see what I mean. Just however you're sitting, ask your body, what part of me wants a little attention right now? And then just pause. Notice if your attention goes to some particular place in the body and see what you feel led to do. I actually just sat up a little taller because my neck sent me a signal, like you're slumping down towards your microphone. So I just naturally, organically did a little movement and things feel better. What happened for you? You can ask that question, what part of me wants a little attention right now? Or you could phrase the question in different ways, like maybe, what feels a little stuck? Or what area needs a bit of relief at this moment? I just took a deeper breath. You could ask, what would feel wonderful right now? And just pause. You don't need to really know the answer, just kind of feeling to see what bubbles up when that question is introduced. You probably won't get an answer in words, but something will draw your attention in the body, and then you can respond by doing something, doing a little movement. You can also try this with different positional starting points. Like if you're on your mat, come into tabletop pose and ask, what wants to move right now? Or then come to standing and ask the same question, what wants to move right now? And I bet the movement you do will be different when you're in tabletop versus when you're in standing. So just play, see what happens from these different positional foundations, and ask a question and let the body lead you. So here we're stepping a bit into the openness of not knowing. Ooh, uncertainty. But not knowing what's next in the practice or what movement is needed. It's not pre-planned. And that's what makes it fun, actually. It's a little bit of play or improv. And when you're feeling your body in this attuned and attentive way, you can trust your intuition. Really, don't worry about doing the wrong thing. There's no right or wrong. The movement that comes out of this just tends to be really simple and gentle. And it might be like a yoga pose, or it might be some kind of movement that the world has never seen. But it feels good because it's just the thing that the body was asking for. Just the thing. And this really gets us out of our heads. We have to slow down to listen in this way. And it's a fun way to toss out the agendas and the plans and the busyness, the knowing it all, just for a little while, and connect to the body. So that was number 5, improv. Last one. Okay, number 6 is to use a mindfulness meditation technique like the body scan within poses. There's other techniques you can use, but I'll talk about the body scan because I think this is a really interesting one to play with in a pose. In the body scan, it's a meditation technique where we move our attention slowly and methodically through the body, feeling it from the inside out, if you will. This works great in a longer supported pose like a yin yoga or restorative yoga pose. But you can also try it in more active poses that you're holding for several breaths. This is a little bit outside the box. You probably won't have time to scan the whole body, but you can pick an area to connect to more fully through this technique. Like, for example, if I'm doing Warrior 2, I am not going to hold it for minutes and minutes for a long meditation. Like, no thanks. But I can hold it long enough to scan my attention up from the back foot through that leg and into my hip and just do a body scan of one leg. And then the next time I do the pose, or maybe on the second side, I pick a different area, like my torso, and scan through that, or my arms and scan from my fingertips to my chest. Something like that. It can be quite revealing to tune into the areas that are not your usual focus. Like, have you noticed how we always seem to pay attention to the parts of the body we would engage to get into the pose and to use to adjust the alignment, but we don't always feel into or notice the rest of the body? Like, what's going on with the rest of the body? So that's kind of interesting, and it can be really interesting to sort of highlight some of those more mysterious areas of the pose through a body scan type technique. But most importantly, it's another way to slow down the mind. Using your attention, engaging your brain in this deliberate way really helps to create some mental space. And then you can repeat this body scan a couple times in different poses and then in your shavasana or in your practice with a meditation. So you could really weave it throughout your whole practice as a theme. Okay, so those are my 6 ways for today to slow down through a mindful yoga practice with some hints for how you can take that deeper presence with you beyond your time on the mat. I hope that a few of these resonated with you, and I would love to hear if you try some of them. You can post and tag me on Instagram or send me a direct message. On Instagram, I'm at Addie_moved-to-meditate, so you could find me there. And mainly, I wish you some moments of slowing down and savoring this week, and many chances to be fully present with what matters for you. Thanks for helping to create a slower, kinder world for all of us through your interest in these topics and these kinds of practices. Be well until next time. So that's today's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with a friend and/or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and help others find us that way. To learn more about my work, the Moved to Meditate class library, live online classes, teacher trainings, and private lessons, go to movedtomeditate.yoga. Thanks so much for listening.